The Incredible Hulk came into this world thanks to an act of devastation, and he remained a personification of rage and anger and sheer brutality. And his comic book history reflects that. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Speaking of which, let's start with Old Man Logan. The Hulk and Wolverine have had one of the oddest rivalries. It all started when the Wolverine was introduced in the Hulk comics, in the Incredible Hulk issue number 181, and they've had many rematches over the years, with some of the most notable appearing in What If, Volume 2, number 50, Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk, World War Hulk, X-Men, Savage Wolverine number 5, and The Incredible Hulk number 340. But their nastiest bout was definitely in Old Man Logan. Following a huge conflict where the villains managed to band together and wipe out almost all the heroes, a pretty sinister Bruce Banner took over a section of California with his inbred kids, the Hulk Gang. In the last few issues of that story, in revenge for the Hulk wiping out his family, Wolverine went on the warpath and eradicated most of the gang. Banner hulked out into this 30-foot tall nasty Hulk and ate Wolverine alive, only for Wolverine to reform inside his stomach and cut his way out. This wasn't the end of the Hulk though, and Old Man Logan would face not only the Hulk again, but even his smarter, devious counterpart, the Maestro. Speaking of Maestro, that brings me to my next memorable moment. For any of you who might not know, Maestro is a version of the Hulk that came to us in the Future Imperfect storyline, taking place in an alternate universe thanks to a nuclear conflict that wiped out almost all the superheroes and most of humanity. The Hulk actually thrived. He began absorbing all this radiation from the conflict, making the strongest, smartest version of the Hulk that had been seen up until that point. Maestro Hulk took control of the remnants of New York, called Dystopia, and he ruled it with an iron fist. Future Imperfect essentially gave us our regular 616 Professor Hulk, traveling to this alternate future and facing the Maestro version of himself. Maestro completely pummeled the living snot out of Professor Hulk, eventually snapping his neck, and then villain monologuing at him the whole time. Professor Hulk only won when he brought Maestro back in time to when the Gamma Bomb first went off, and he let Maestro succumb to the blast. As you do. When fights between Wolverine and Maestro were pretty brutal, another character who often fights the Hulk would be Hyperion. These two absolute powerhouses have also faced off a bunch of times, but if we're looking for brutality here, I shall turn your attention to Heroes Reborn number 2 by Jason Aaron. This story found a new Hyperion, who had just wiped out Galactus by flying straight through his head, fought off against versions of Gladiator and the Imperial Guard, Mr. Beyonder, and a giant version of Ultron. But the last thing he needed to do was stop the Hulk. Hyperion finds him trying to tell a group of kids about how he's not crazy, how history has changed, and how he's sad, which makes it almost upsetting after the Hulk gets his hands on Hyperion's throat. Hyperion invokes an executive order and uses his laser eyes to blow holes into the Hulk, taking his life until he finally stops getting back up. Let's move on to Emil Blonsky, who has been an enemy of the Incredible Hulk for a long time. So it doesn't come as a surprise that he's also taken some of the most brutal beatings that the Hulk has dished out. Granted, I'm not gonna say he doesn't deserve them. In Incredible Hulk issue 54 from 2004, Emil makes the small mistake during a massive scuffle of reminding Bruce/Hulk how he ended Betty Ross's life with his irradiated blood and asking if the Hulk ever thinks about that. And to that I say, my guy, what the heck are you thinking? To the shock and surprise of nobody, this throws Hulk into a fit of rage, double fisting Abomination into the sky and absolutely pummeling him, with one panel showing the Hulk punching Abomination so hard his fist looks like it completely implodes the villain's face, with chunks flying off. And then he throws Abomination into a helicopter. You know, just cuz. Just so we're aware, Abomination isn't a pushover. He regularly throws punches with the Hulk, even beating him a couple of times. But Hulk put him down in a few pages, and all it took was a mistake of a few choice words. Think before you speak, folks. The end series chronicles the last days of various different characters in the Marvel Universe. For a lot of Doomsday type stories, it often ends in the Earth being destroyed in a nuclear war. But what remains after that? Well, basically the Hulk. That's it. That's all. Just the end of the world and the Hulk. As the only human left on planet Earth, Bruce Banner wanders the aftermath in an eternal struggle with himself, as in an eternal struggle with the Hulk. Basically, Bruce has seen the deaths of everybody he loved, everybody he cared about. There's nothing left in this world for him and he just wants to pass on. But no matter what he does, the Hulk's not gonna let him. Hulk not only stops Banner from ending his own life, but the Hulk doesn't succumb to anything. Not even giant mutated cockroaches that essentially swarmed and devoured as much of the Hulk as they could. Bruce and Hulk have a huge internal falling out, but then Bruce has a heart attack that actually ends his life, or at least half his life. Because while the Hulk himself goes on to survive, now he realizes just how alone he really is. While Bruce is naturally the core figure in his family tree, the roots of the Hulk's rage actually come from his father, Brian Banner. And without him, there really wouldn't be a Hulk. Now for this point, I'm not really talking about one specific moment, because the brutal part of this is the character of Brian Banner entirely. If there's a villain in this story, it's Brian. He physically and emotionally mistreated his wife Rebecca and their son. As seen in Incredible Hulk number 312 from 1968, Brian became deeply disturbed and obsessed with this idea that his radiation research had turned his son, Bruce, into a little monster. Brian was even responsible for the passing of Rebecca in front of Bruce, which led directly to the development of multiple personalities for Bruce, including the Hulk, which is essentially the personification of rage in a child who has been severely mistreated. Now, if I were forced to pick one moment, it would be when Brian actually died, which appeared to be at the hands of Bruce himself in a graveyard, as one does. All of which happened in the Incredible Hulk issue 1, by the way. It's honestly incredibly tragic. Years later, during the Chaos War, Brian actually emerged on Earth as a fearsome Hulk of his own before he was defeated and returned to the afterlife. More recently, Brian made a lot of trouble in Immortal Hulk as a servant or incarnation of the One Below All. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle the Hulk was sent to Sakaran by the Illuminati at the beginning of the Planet Hulk storyline blows up, wiping out the Green Scar's wife and child. Hulk reaches a whole new level of anger, which is directed at those who sent him here, the Illuminati. So he headed to Earth with his Warsworn. He made a quick stop in the moon to defeat Black Bolt of the Inhumans, but when he got to Earth, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated. And when that time limit stopped, well, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster, the Avengers and their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange, using the power of Zom. You know, one of the most powerful magical monsters in all of Marvel Comics, all while saving innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them since he only really sought justice. He was eventually sorta defeated by the Sentry, who he fought until they both reverted back to their human forms, which is when Bruce Banner knocked Bob Reynolds right out. And then the comic version of Miek takes the life of Bruce's friend Rick, and the Hulk just goes absolutely ballistic, creating earthquakes with his footsteps and almost destroying the world. It would appear Tony Stark grew a little tired of getting beat up by the Hulk over the years. This basically came to a breaking point in the Immortal Hulk story when the Hulk faces off against the Avengers and Stark's pretty new Hulkbuster gets completely wrecked. This caused him to use what he referred to as the Big Gun, aka the Helios laser, a massive space laser laced with UV radiation that, when unleashed onto the Hulk during one of his rampages, completely fried the Hulk to dust. When Hulk woke up, since, you know, he's immortal in this story now, he could be terminated, so instead he found that he'd been sliced up with an adamantium razor and placed in a dozen different jars. He had his hand in one, his heart in another, his lungs on another shelf. It's pretty messed up, since a jar with his living head was basically forced to watch as a scientist dissected him further to study. Yeah. No thank you, hard pass. In 1995, Marvel released the last Avengers story, and with a title like that, from 1995, you can imagine it's not exactly all sunshines and rainbows. And you'd be correct. Within the first few pages, the current Avengers of this alternate future and their base are completely wiped out by an absolutely massive explosion caused by Ultron 59. But that's not even the worst part. At some time in the past, this universe's version of the Incredible Hulk turned evil, thanks to an event that happened fighting alongside Thor, the Thing, and Hercules. The Hulk turned against his fellow Avengers, Wonder Man, Hawkeye, Mockingbird, and Tigra, who absolutely got it the worst. Tigra against the Hulk is not a fight you would normally expect, and this comic tells you why. Since in her attack against the Green Goliath, Hulk simply grabs her by her legs and arms and pulls her apart in a scene kind of like Sentry ripping apart Ares in the Siege event, but way scarier and more terrifying. Hawkeye and Mockingbird literally flee for their lives, while Wonder Man flew into a rage and he and the Hulk had a slugfest that ended with Wonder Man detonating and wiping both himself and the Hulk from existence. I know I've already mentioned one instance from the Immortal Hulk storyline that I felt was extremely nuts, but to be quite honest, the entire story is one big brutal collection. What's happening in some of the comic panels is almost hard to even decipher, as the legendary art is grabbing every inch of your attention, with horrifying body horror that I've never really seen in a comic before. There's nothing like this. Moments where he escaped from those jars he had been placed into, and his different displaced parts start merging together around this helpless scientist who basically gets consumed by the body of Hulk, or when the leader basically becomes a horrifying monster swallowing Brian Banner and ripping the Devil Hulk apart, or when Hulk ripped his own face off, or when he mutates into a giant monster at the end of one particular timeline and destroys literally everything in existence, consuming the sentience of the universe. The whole Immortal Hulk run is just pure horror from start to finish, wrapped in an incredible Hulk wrapping paper.
Retcons by default erase or make big changes to what previous writers had done with a character or storyline. That's just the way it is. What's a little less common is when a writer basically retcons everything in their run on a character that had been done by the previous writer. Bruce Jones's second volume of the Hulk was a mixed bag. While it lacked on a lot of the smashy breaky bang bang stuff that a lot of Hulk fans liked, it did a lot of work for the psyche and character of Bruce Banner himself. I've seen it compared to the X-Files a little bit. It was controversial, but it was still cool. Well then, Peter David returned to the character for Tempus Fugit, or Tempus Fugi, and he made it so that Nightmare just popped up out of nowhere and revealed that a lot of the stuff in Volume 2 didn't actually happen at all, and it was actually the Hell Lord Nightmare just messing with Bruce's mind for literal years. Fans were pretty peeved about that one, and Tempus Fugit has been accepted as one of the worst Hulk stories in Marvel's catalog. But okay, I think it's important to note that Peter David is not a bad writer at all, especially for the Hulk. Peter David had an amazing 12-year run on Incredible Hulk, but it kind of ended in tragedy, specifically for the character of Betty Ross. In the ending of Incredible Hulk 456, after things had gotten better for Bruce and Betty, the two go to bed only for Bruce to wake up finding Betty covered in huge amounts of cellular damage thanks to radiation poisoning, seemingly from him. She then promptly passed away at 10:39 a.m. on May 9th, and it was kind of doubled down on in Peter David and George Perez's Future Imperfect story, where Betty's ashes are in the possession of the future Rick Jones. But then, the mess began. Peter David and Marvel didn't agree on where Betty's passing would lead for the Hulk, and so Peter was booted off of the Hulk. When Joe Casey came on, Betty's death is almost immediately retconned, with Betty placed in stasis, and the ashes we saw were revealed to be her uncle's instead. Years later, this would eventually lead to Betty being properly resurrected as Red She-Hulk, which is also something that left fans with mixed feelings. Having debuted in the second project in the MCU following Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, the Hulk is the MCU's longest running hero, but at the same time his origin and emergence has not been talked about really at all, and didn't seem to matter to anyone in the MCU at all until rather recently. With She-Hulk getting her series, the purple freak Happy Hogan showing up in What If Season 2, hippie surfer dude Scar showing up, which don't even get me started, and possibly the World War Hulk movie coming, Marvel actually very subtly retconned the Hulk's MCU origins. According to Marvel Studios' The Marvel Cinematic Universe and Official Timeline book, Banner became the Hulk in the mid-2000s, with the character having been on the run for 5 years at the start of the Incredible Hulk movie, which slightly coincides with a scene from She-Hulk where Banner says he has been Hulk for 15 years, aka since 2010. Who am I kidding? No, the real hated retcon here is absolutely hippie surfer Yogi Scar, just being randomly shoehorned into She-Hulk Attorney at Law. It was so dumb. No. Now retcons are pretty controversial for a few reasons. I think the main two reasons would be that 1, they are just handled really sloppily sometimes, but 2, comic book fans just don't really like change. But change is necessary in comics, especially as time goes on and characters require successors for the existence of our favorite characters to even make sense. Miles Morales is an example of a successor that people actually loved, until he just became a second Spider-Man, which fans still loved. But one successor fans did not love was Amadeus Cho. Now I have to be honest, I actually did like Cho as the totally awesome Hulk. It was fun, and that's enough for me personally, but fun isn't traditionally the Hulk's thing, and it also isn't really the Hulk's thing to pass on his persona to another person. The Hulk title isn't like Captain America's shield or a Spider-Man costume. The Hulk is an alter ego of Bruce Banner, a reflection of his trauma. Sure, the gamma radiation makes sense to be transferred to someone else, but you lose a significant amount of what makes the Hulk by giving it to someone else. So needless to say, Amadeus Cho's time as the totally awesome Hulk didn't really last. Now during the Planet Hulk storyline, Bruce Banner was tricked by his supposed friends, all members of the Illuminati, and was sent to the planet Sakaar, which he then liberated and conquered. Then he mistakenly believed that a device set by the Illuminati had laid low millions of his new people, including his pregnant wife. Hulk came back to Earth and laid waste to those that betrayed him, and brought down everything and everyone who stood against him. Nothing could stop him. He destroyed Iron Man's latest Hulkbuster, wrecked a Zom-empowered Doctor Strange, and had a super intense fight with the Sentry that he technically kind of won. In the end, Hulk was about to destroy the entire planet before Tony Stark called down a combined strike from orbital satellites that finally took down the Hulk. Then Marvel released Maestro World War M number 3, and basically had Dr. Doom point out that that made no damn sense. Someone proposes to use the exact same kind of orbital satellite death ray to take out Maestro, who is an evil future version of the Hulk, and Doom just kind of scoffs and says it would literally just bounce off of him. Maybe this is more of Marvel poking fun at itself more than a retcon, but still. But this is actually a two-parter. So yes, Marvel kind of called out their own choices with World War M, but the orbital satellite strike itself was actually retconned. The actual conclusion of World War Hulk with the use of the satellites felt very lackluster, with the Hulk basically just giving up and allowing Iron Man to unleash his Deus Ex Machina. So, a few years later, a retcon for that sequence explained that the satellites were actually siphoning off gamma radiation from Hulk's body. While part of this led to the motivation of a faction of Hulk villains, it was also used to explain the creation of the Red Hulk, which people did not like, and it was followed by Red Hulk taking the leading role in a series that was supposed to be about the actual Green Hulk. But also, if Tony had such a crazy anti-gamma super draining weapon, 1, there's no reason to send Banner to Sakaar in the first place, and 2, why did he need to hijack several different countries and even other planets' satellites? It's weird, I don't like it. Now, while I and a lot of comic book fans are actually fans of the Immortal Hulk series and how it brought some significant changes to the character of the Hulk, particularly when it comes to how it is that all these various different Hulks have been able to be resurrected so many times, the run also happened to make some big changes to the origin of the character, and for a lot of fans, you just don't mess with that kind of thing. The Hulk's traditional origin saw Bruce Banner studying gamma radiation, helping to design the gamma bomb. While they were testing the device, Bruce rushed out and shielded Rick Jones, who was in the blast radius, exposing Bruce to massive amounts of gamma radiation. It's very science fiction. Immortal Hulk takes that and also makes it supernatural. Now, gamma radiation has magical elements that weaken the barrier between our world and a hell-like plane that lies below all others called the Below Place, where the One Below All lives. The gamma then allows the One Below All to turn these gamma mutates into his avatars on Earth. Hulk is the greatest of them. Personally, I actually kinda like this one, but I understand why for a lot of longtime fans, they do not. But if we are talking about hated changes to the Hulk's origin, we can 100% look at Original Sin, one of Marvel's most obvious retconning events. In Original Sin, Uatu the Watcher was found deceased on the moon, and then in each subsequent issue, secrets held by the Watcher are revealed that altered various different characters' histories, and led one step closer to the answer to who did the slaying of the Watcher. I'll leave you to find out what the other secrets were, but one of the biggest and most hated was the revelation that Tony Stark was largely responsible for the creation of the Hulk. Essentially, Tony had altered the construction of the original gamma device. Thanks to Tony weakening the concentration of the device, when the accident took place, Banner ended up surviving his exposure to the intense amounts of gamma instead of being completely vaporized by it. Fans did not like this, and it kinda makes me wonder how that compiles with the whole Immortal Hulk thing. I don't know. Now, I've talked about Immortal Hulk a few times. It is honestly a bit of a masterpiece. While some people obviously have issues with it, it is widely regarded as absolutely amazing. So how do you follow up something like that? People didn't exactly have high hopes for what came next and how it would measure up. That is until Donny Cates was slated to write it, with Ryan Ottley illustrating. Then people were excited to see what came next. So imagine everyone's surprise when they immediately chose to ignore Immortal Hulk almost entirely. Hulk was advertised as literally immortal no more, and it completely set itself apart in tone. Immortal Hulk ended with Bruce finally getting rid of his father's influence and their surviving Hulk personas uniting to inspire Bruce to turn over a new leaf. Hulk starts with Bruce and Hulk back at odds again, and in Hulk number 6, the Betty Ross in Bruce's mind is revealed as Brian Banner, who has somehow infested his son's consciousness yet again. Brian was supposed to be gone for good, and his return means that Bruce is still a prisoner of his past. It's just an odd choice, and the entire run got completely canned after it barely even got started in the first place. Now, for this last point, I want to circle back to Immortal Hulk yet again, but I want to take a different spin on the idea of worst Hulk retcon. For the rest of this list, I had looked at retcons that were pretty vastly disliked by fans. The Immortal Hulk changing Hulk's origin was disliked by fans, but it brought a whole whack of really cool stuff at the same time. One of the coolest things, in my opinion, but one that is the worst because it's terrifying, is how bad things could have gotten for the entire universe if things went the way the One Below All wanted in Immortal Hulk. So the Hulk was retconned to be the avatar for the One Below All. In a possible alternate future, the One Below All would manage to take over the Hulk completely and turn him into a being of unfathomable power and destruction, who would go on to destroy every known thing in the entire universe and consume the very essence of said universe. So that when the universe rebooted, the Hulk would end it all before it even started again. That destructive end could have been the Hulk's entire purpose for life, and was luckily prevented from happening thanks to some time shenanigans. But I kinda loved the entire thing. It was super interesting to me.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Ringmaster. Issue 3 of the Incredible Hulk back in Volume 1, we see the Hulk take on the Ringmaster. Will the mighty Hulk be a match for the Ringmaster? Well, apparently, yeah. He takes on a whole circus of crime who, might I add, do not have any superpowers, but right off the bat, the Human Cannonball gets the Hulk quite good. The Human Cannonball, just a regular guy with a makeshift hammer. This dude's spine would fold on impact if he cannonballed into the Incredible Hulk, so already I'm upset. And then it gets worse. A regular guy with a fireman's hose blasts the Hulk, and then he goes down, this time for good. I mean, I know the Hulk's mind was being toyed with here a bit, but the fact that a crime circus was able to best him in the first place, not okay. Not okay. Number 9, Doc Ock. In Eric Larson's 1992 Spider-Man run, issue 19 titled Revenge of the Sinister Six showed us a more powerful version of Doc Ock because he had new, fancier arms. In fact, the whole crew had the jump on Peter at this point. He was for sure in need of backup. And right on cue, the Hulk smashes through the floor, just sending wood chips all over the damn place. Already such a mess. And he's coming in hot too. The Hulk says knock knock when he busts out of the floor. That is so badass. First he flicks Shocker out of the way, gives him the finger, literally, and then he tosses Mysterio back to sleep. And then when he goes to handle Doc Ock, he's caught off guard from his unbreakable arms with limitless power. Doc Ock had the upper hand, or 4 upper hands, I guess, in this case. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. No sweat, but it does help us out quite a bit. I'm not going to waste any more time. Thank you so much. For the best. Back to this list. Number 8, the Hulk Killer. With a name like that, you already know how this one's going to end. Created by Sam Stearns, the leader, Hulk Killer first appeared in Tales to Astonish, issue 86. Some detectives are going through the leader's notes. They're finding out that he's created these humanoids, but the Hulk destroyed them all but one. This humanoid was built specifically to take down the Hulk, so the cops call in General Ross. They figure this ought to be an asset in some way, shape, or form for the government, but if only they could bring it to life, because, you know, what would possibly go wrong? So they bring him to life, and it all goes wrong. He just leaves, he walks right out of the building, not even fazed one bit by the bullets, of course. Then the Hulk arrives, they battle it out, and they break their surroundings, but Hulk Killer just simply absorbs all these hits. Next, Hulk Killer beats Hulk so hard, he reverts back into his banner form. It's embarrassing. Number 7, Juggernaut. Kane Marco has been one of Marvel's biggest and baddest since his first appearance in X-Men issue 12. Once Marco came into contact with a gem, he then obtained the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. Literally. The Hulk on average can beat Juggernaut, but in Incredible Hulk issue 402, Hulk bumps into this Jack dude who he realizes is not just an ordinary construction worker after all, rather it's Marco. Hulk thinks he has him. He tries to save Juggernaut's life after he falls into quicksand, but then he tries to pull Hulk in as well, so Hulk's like, alright, forget it, I'm gonna let you sink, see ya. Then of course he popped out of the quicksand and the beating continued, and it kept going and going, and the Hulk went down until he was almost dead. And that's when Red Skull stepped in and told Kane that was enough beating for now. Number 6, Zax. Making its first appearance in the Incredible Hulk issue 166, the Thing from the Dynamo was originally the result of an accident that happened at Edison Nuclear Power Plant. When a group of criminals tried to power off New York City, it went south, you know, the toughest gang in town, shutting down the power during Game of Thrones. That's truly, truly awful. Keep it up, guys. So guns started blazing and it caused this massive chain reaction in the atomic reactor, and then this living energy then absorbed them, and then soon took a humanoid form with a villain voice as well, of course. Zax absorbs the electricity from its victims' minds as well, so it gains their thoughts. Hawkeye comes in with a convenient foam arrow. In fact, Hawkeye's aim saved the day here, but they don't give him credit. They actually give the Hulk the credit, which is pretty rough. But don't worry, Hulk got what was coming from Zax when General Ross merged with the living energy and then beat down Hulk and Rick Jones. Ross was actually about to finish the pair off, but Zax's personality came back and then he flew off. That was a close call, Banner. A little too close. Number 5, Brian Banner. The father of Bruce Banner was honestly a pretty horrible guy. He was he killed Bruce's mother is honestly pure evil, and he of course was locked away for 15 years afterwards, and then when him and Bruce reunited down the road, Bruce accidentally killed him. Yikes. Now this isn't the end of his story though, because during the Chaos War storyline in Incredible Hulk's issue 619, his dad comes back as a Hulk demon who would get stronger the angrier Banner got. Now obviously this is a traumatic experience, going down memory lane can hurt quite a bit, so this demon Hulk dad would have finished off Bruce if Jarella didn't step in to save the day. Bruce has the brain and Brian's got the pain. The Banners are a wild bunch. Number 4. Horfin. Born the offspring of a frost giant and Fenris, Horfin first appeared in the Incredible Hulk issue 422. When the Warriors 3 and the Hulk were going after Agamemnon, they followed them to Singard Castle. Horfin was created purely to guard this castle, so now the Hulk has to fight a frost wolf. And this is pretty intimidating because when the frost giant Singard himself unleashed his Horfin, the order was to kill the Hulk right off the bat. No warning, nothing, just go eat him, bye, go. And it did, yeah. I did mention this wolf was incredibly big, right? What a snack. Number 3, Pit. Image Comics introduced Pit in Youngblood issue 4. It was their version of the Hulk. He's an alien-human hybrid created by the Creed as a literal death machine. So 5 years later, Marvel gave the fans the ultimate battle and released Hulk Pit Reality Check. This was just 50 pages of punching and smashing and kicking. It's exactly what you would expect and want. But Pit remained on top for the most part of this fight, and you gotta include Image Comics whenever we can, because Pit is a treat. He's also drooling and jacked. He's just a nightmare. I would never want to deal with him. Number 2, Thanos. This is the only movie reference in this list, but I do have to include it. The time Thanos punched the Hulk in the neck so hard that the Beast straight up retired. Avengers Infinity War, directed by the lovely Russo brothers, before the title card even pops up in the movie, before it's like, bam, Avengers, the Incredible Hulk is gone. You don't see him anymore. He pops out and tries to get the upper hand on Thanos, and without even using the Power Stone, Thanos rock and boppers his neck. Now, we don't see the Hulk after this for 5 whole years. And even then, he's like taking selfies and dabbing. It's not the same at all. And finally, number 1, Maestro. Maestro comes from an alternate future on Earth 9200, the Future Imperfect storyline. Now this takes place 90 years in the future, and that Hulk had basically just absorbed all this radiation from our fallen planet over time. He gets stronger, and unfortunately he also gets smarter. This isn't a dumb Hulk that gets, hosed down at a circus. This is the Maestro we're talking about. So our Incredible Hulk goes to fight him, but on the way into the massive city of Dystopia, appropriately named, Hulk finds all these weapons and artifacts from all of our fallen heroes. This new world was much harder to survive in, even with superpowers. And that's when Hulk meets up with his old friend, Rick Jones. Rick fills Banner in that basically everybody's dead except for those residing in Maestro's dystopia. He would keep the radiation level low enough for people to survive, but he would also keep it high enough for him to continue being powered up. Maestro ends up Minecrafting his way to Jones' secret base, and the two Hulks come face to face. Now part 2 of the story is obviously just a massive fight. Maestro is terrifying. He calls Banner out on a bluff, and then he just tosses a lady to smithereens. Like, he actually doesn't care. He'll kill anybody in his way. It's terrifying. Hulk hits him where the sun doesn't shine, and Maestro sneaks up and breaks his neck.
Number 10, Bi-Beast. Created by an extinct race of aliens called the Bird People, Bi-Beast is an android with 2 heads stacked on top of each other. In one head is the knowledge of warfare and tactics, while the other is filled with information on culture. I mean, it's a little weird that the Bird People didn't just put all of this information into one slightly larger head, but hey, I'm just some guy on YouTube. What do I know about alien android design? First appearing in Incredible Hulk number 169, Bi-Beast was left alone in the floating city of Aerie after the extinction of his alien masters. When the city's machines stopped working due to deterioration, Bi-Beast captured Bruce Banner to try and force him to repair them. Banner tricked Bi-Beast and instead used the alien technology to cure Harpy and return her to her true form of Betty Ross. This resulted in a fight between Bi-Beast and the Hulk, but this fight was abandoned when Bi-Beast realized that MODOK was attacking the city. Rather than let the floating city be captured, Bi-Beast activated the city's self-destruct protocols, seemingly dying in the process. Now, Bi-Beast has reappeared a few times in the years since, trying to destroy the world and kill the Hulk, but honestly, other than his strange appearance, there's not much scary about him. But hey, someone's gotta be at the bottom of the list. Number 9, Cyclop. Cyclops is a one-eyed member of an ancient insectoid race who worship the dark gods. Cyclops was chosen to be an agent of these dark gods who gave him the task of finding them a power source that could summon them. If he succeeded, the gods promised to reawaken his race so that they could conquer Earth for themselves. He chose the Hulk as his power source and captured him in Avengers number 88, hoping to shrink him down to a more manageable size. When the Avengers interrupted this process to fight the villain, the Hulk was left alone and no one was able to turn off the machine, and the Jade Giant was accidentally shrunk so small that he vanished from sight. Cyclops found the Hulk in the microverse and the two battled, but Hulk came out victorious. Yet another villain who is more scary looking than anything else. I do like the idea of a bug cultist trying to bring back dark gods in order to take over the world though. He has only had 11 appearances, so maybe he can earn a higher spot on the list at some point in the future. Number 8. Lord Armageddon, the warlord of an alien race called the Trojan. Armageddon led his armies to numerous victories against several worlds in his efforts to expand his empire. He was so consumed with this expansion that he didn't notice when his wife died giving birth to his twin sons. When one of his twins was murdered by Atalanta, the surviving son fell in love with her and decided to try and marry her, and kidnapped her, bringing her back to his homeworld. Lord Armageddon supported this, and when Hulk and the Silver Surfer came to try and rescue Atalanta, Armageddon managed to incapacitate both the heroes. When his son Trauma fell on a broken piece of armor and died, he asked his father to give the heroes and his beloved safe passage home. Armageddon later tried to bring his son back to life, but the machine he was using was destroyed by Hulk. Although this earned the Hulk Armageddon's respect, it also caused him to vow revenge on the Hulk. I think anyone who is so obsessed with interstellar domination and who can fight the Hulk and the Silver Surfer is pretty scary, but mostly just because of how much raw power they are dealing with. So if this were a video ranking the powers of the villains, perhaps he would be higher on this list. Number 7. Harpy. After longtime Hulk love interest Betty Ross's husband was seemingly killed in a rescue mission gone wrong, she suffered a nervous breakdown. MODOK learned of this and pumped her full of gamma radiation, hoping to create a creature that could go toe-to-toe with the Hulk. The gamma rays gave Betty wings, talons, and the ability to shoot dangerous rays from her hands, and she became the insane creature known as Harpy. As stated before, Bruce Banner was able to use Beast's tech to save her, and Betty would go on to marry Bruce, die, and then come back to life as the Red She-Hulk before further mutating into the Red Harpy, who is more of an ally to the Hulk than an enemy. Harpy has a scary look, no doubt, but what I find scary about her is more so the idea of the person Hulk loves more than anything becoming a monster that wants him dead. Having to then fight her and deal with the fact that even if he wins the fight, he's just hurt Betty. It adds a certain level of dread and nuance that you don't get with a lot of the other villains. Number 6. Absorbing Man. After the death of his mother, Carl Creel's father became abusive towards him, eventually kicking him out to live on the street when he eventually tried to fight back. In order to survive, Creel engaged in petty theft to support himself while building his career as a boxer. Creel eventually became an enforcer for the Owl before getting arrested. While serving his sentence, he was chosen by Loki to be a pawn in one of his schemes against Thor. Loki spiked the inmate's water with Asgardian herbs that granted him the power to absorb the properties of any element he touched. He used his powers to absorb the powers and properties of Mjolnir, Thor's magical hammer, and was able to successfully take on the God of Thunder, although he was eventually defeated in a rematch. Absorbing Man went on to battle many heroes, including the Hulk, who he was hired to kill by an evil organization called They Who Wield Power. Although this didn't work, he did tangle with the Hulk a few other times, such as when they fought on Easter Island, and Absorbing Man absorbed the island in hopes of taking over the world. I didn't include Absorbing Man in the first video because he has fought so many Marvel heroes that it's hard to call him a Hulk villain. However, he is a major player in the Immortal Hulk series, so let's go with it. In this series, he was given an injection of Hulk Plug, which turned him red and let him absorb gamma radiation. He fought the Hulk and inadvertently absorbed the demonic being known as the One Below All. This gave Creel a very painful looking and significantly more terrifying appearance, and caused him, Hulk, and all the members of Gamma Flight planet to be transported to the Demon's Realm. Creel helped stop the One Below All and was offered a spot on Gamma Flight by Puck, where he currently works as a hero rather than a villain. Number 5. Glob. When a prisoner named Joe Timms learned that the love of his life was dying, Joe decided to escape prison in order to see her one last time. Unfortunately for him, he drowned in the swamp near the prison before he could make it back to her. Years later, the Hulk was disposing of a barrel of radioactive waste, and in a move that I'm sure the EPA would be horrified by, threw it into the swamp. The waste revived Timms and transformed his body into the deformed, gloopy mess you see before you. Because she seemingly just can't catch a break, Betty Ross was mistaken by the Glob for his lost love. This caused Glob to kidnap her and for the Hulk to go after him. As a creature of goop, the Hulk was unable to damage him with his fists, and if he hadn't been destroyed by the same radioactive waters that spawned him, Hulk may have been out of luck. Glob was later reformed by the Leader and has tangled with the Hulk a few times in the years since. Speaking of which, number 4, the Leader. Samuel Stearns was a man of below average intelligence who was working at a chemical plant when one of the canisters of waste he was moving broke open and doused him in the toxic waste. On the plus side, rather than giving him cancer, it gave him super intelligence. On the flip side, it also caused his head to grow to a massive size and for his skin to turn green. Stearns decided to dedicate himself to taking over the world and started calling himself the Leader. Now, there is no doubt that the Leader is one of Hulk's greatest foes, if not the greatest of them. I mean, it's either him or Abomination. A lot of you were shocked at him being left off of part 1 of this list, and honestly, my reasoning was that the Leader isn't especially scary compared to the other villains he recruits for his schemes against the Hulk. However, considering the amount of horrifying plots he is responsible for, combined with how disturbing the character was in his run in Immortal Hulk when he grew to giant size and attacked the Hulk with tendrils, I'm happy to include him here. While we're on the subject, I'm currently working on a video about the Immortal Hulk for our Attempting to Explain series, so keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks. Number 3, Madman. Coming in at the number 3 slot, we actually have the Leader's brother, Philip Stearns. Phil was a student at Caltech at the same time as Bruce Banner. Although brilliant in his own right, he was jealous of Bruce's superior intellect and developed an obsession with his classmate. When Bruce became the Hulk, this infatuation became dangerous, as Phil started experimenting on himself with gamma radiation in order to try and be more like his favorite hero. Not only did this result in Stearns becoming a super strong, deformed monster, but it caused what was left of his sanity to snap, and him to develop multiple personality disorder. Although he initially tried to kill the Hulk, he later changed his mind, deciding to remain a villain, but to not kill Hulk as life would be too boring without him to annoy. Now, the idea of a Hulk who has developed DID and is obsessed with Bruce Banner and the Hulk is pretty disturbing and is frightening enough that the Leader actually once teamed up with the Hulk to defeat him, confessing to Hulk that he is scared of Madman. Although years later, Leader would eventually kill his brother in Thunderbolts Volume 2, Issue 6. Number 2, Xemnu. This fluffy beast is an alien with the power to hypnotize people on a mass scale who crash landed on Earth. He planned on using his hypnotic powers to make the people of Earth build him a new ship in order to return to his home planet, despite the fact that the force of the rocket would tear the Earth apart. Although this plan failed, Xemnu did eventually make his way back to his home planet, where he discovered that everyone had died of disease. He returned to Earth, where he was engaged in many schemes to use his hypnotism to take over the planet. He has fought a lot of heroes such as Namor, Iron Man, and Deadpool, but he seems to hate the Hulk the most. In one of his more creative schemes, he tricked the Hulk into defeating a monster, causing a wave of parasites to be unleashed on nearby civilians. Xemnu then showed up and stopped the parasites and implanted false memories in all the witnesses' minds of him being a hero. He continued to use these powers to turn public opinion against the Hulk before Hulk eventually defeated him. When killed, Xemnu can reform his body by taking over someone else's body and gradually transforming it into his. As if that wasn't bad enough, he has developed a taste for humans and regularly consumes them in brutal and terrifying ways. Number 1, the One Below All. So the One Above All is the ruler of the multiverse and the creator of all life in it. Although he is the source of love and good, he also has an evil form known as the One Below All, who is the personification of hatred and destruction. The ruler of the lowest point of reality, the below place, it is able to manifest itself on Earth through the mutagenic form of gamma radiation. This means that when Bruce Banner was caught in the gamma bomb, he was infused with this dark entity's power. The One Below All wants to become the only remaining thing in the multiverse and destroy everything else. As he is incapable of having his own personality without a host, it waited until Hulk's father, Brian Banner, died to merge with him and take on his personality, which, if you know the character or watched part 1 of this video, you know is a really bad thing. The leader eventually managed to absorb Brian's soul in hopes of learning more about the One Below All, but was possessed by the One Below All. It's hard to say which actions to count as the One Below Alls and which to count as Brian Banner or the leaders, but his influence is undeniably horrible.
Starting off at number 10, he destroyed Johannesburg. With many comic book stories to pick from, these events can get a little confusing. To start off the list, we go back now to the events of Avengers Age of Ultron, released back in 2015. Now, before Wanda Maximoff was an Avenger, she was getting some dirty work done to help Ultron. Okay, this included playing mind games with the Avengers. So Wanda gets to Banner and he hulks out big time. This time it's very uncontrollable. Now at this point in the MCU, the Hulk has a handle on his Hulk mode, kind of, like he's got it down. After Avengers 1, he was like, I'm always angry, and then he's like standing in the circle with them. He knows what he's doing to some degree, and with the help of Black Widow, she can tippity tap his palm and make him chill out. Black Widow was out of commish this time due to the same mind trick from Wanda, so he ends up going crazy in Johannesburg, and it takes Iron Man and his new Veronica #Hulkbuster armor to come in and knock some sense into him, literally. Now, of course, Wanda was in his head, but none of the other Avengers reacted this way. They just went to places in their mind that brought them a lot of distraught, and they couldn't even fight anymore. They were leveled. So, the Hulk made matters worse, of course, resorting to punching and being, well, a monster. Number 9, he broke Las Vegas. The Hulk was assisting S.H.I.E.L.D. on a mission to clear out some Hydra weapons in the Vegas desert, and after a gamma bomb blew up in his face, he becomes this dark, menacing gray Hulk and begins to terrorize Vegas. The Fantastic Four's Thing comes to help, telling Johnny Storm that monsters understand monsters. Pretty valid point. So Ben goes up to Banner and lays it down. He explains that he knows he doesn't want to hurt anybody else and that he's just messed up, that's all. He continues to offer to help Banner, treatment for the radiation gamma even. And then Hulk responds with, she's dead. Betty Banner is dead and you can't do anything about it. You killed her. And then, bah, he goes crazy. So the people in Vegas see this monster battle happening on the news and they love it? They start placing bets. Some guy's like, $50 on the Hulk. Another guy's like, $50,000 on the Hulk. It's wild. Check out Fantastic Four issue 533 for yourself to see how the Green Giant got through that. Number 8, he left the Avengers. Okay, again, we go back to Age of Ultron. So after the final battle on Sokovia, the Hulk decides to just leave. He hops in the Quinjet after tossing Ultron out and decides to just let it keep flying. He ended up going pretty far considering we don't see him at all during the Civil War storyline. It's not until Thor Ragnarok that we meet Banner again, and he has no idea where he is or how long he's been there. Without the help of Black Widow, he can't transform back into his regular, nice Banner body. I have to include this because this is a decision the Hulk made, not Banner. There's a difference. He himself decided that he was just gonna go. Maybe he was done with hurting people. It's actually a massive character arc that people didn't really look into enough. Like everybody came out of the theater like, whoa, Vision and Wanda, can't believe it. The Scepter was actually no way, dude. Hey guys, where's the Hulk? Where did he go? That's the Hulk. Of course he came to the aid in Thor Ragnarok, but maybe if he hadn't gone at all, he wouldn't have fought Thanos when he did, huh? Therefore not losing and becoming unable to get mean and green come Infinity War when you really needed a Hulk. He could have figured it out on Earth. I mean, he figures out the perfect balance by Endgame, so I feel like if he just stuck around, he would have gotten to that point faster. Also, don't leave the Avengers, man. You need the science bros, always. Number 7. Madison Square Up Garden. This next one is pretty wild. So Thor Ragnarok was loosely based off of the Planet Hulk storyline. I say loosely because that story didn't end up going so well. Like the comic book story didn't end well. So on Sakaar, the rocket that he arrived in ended up blowing to smithereens, causing some casualties that left Hulk a little distraught. So what did he do? He heads back to Earth, pissed, and thus begins the World War Hulk storyline. He just murks everybody, all the heroes that Earth has come to love, just in the path of this very angry beast. It's not a good situation. He locks the Illuminati in Madison Square Garden and then makes them fight to the death. I mean, Once you spend enough time on Sakaar, I guess it becomes second nature to just battle it out. In the first issue of this series, you see Iron Man in his Hulkbuster armor, and he uses repulsors to accelerate his punch, which is something Iron Man can be seen doing in the MCU. I like when they keep small details like that make these series memorable and awesome, especially the artwork. It looks really cool, and then they insert those into the MCU version of that story. See, even Hulk's design on Sakaar, they really wanted to treat the audience with the same elements that we loved already from the comic book. So make sure if you haven't already to grab all 5 issues of the 2007 World War Hulk storyline, because it's actually a treat and you can plow through it in like a day. Number 6, Old Man Logan. Now, we were all delighted to see an R-rated Wolverine story finally on the big screen with the release of Logan back in 2017. This was loosely based on the story Old Man Logan, written by Mark Millar and Steve McNiven. The film had Logan in the spotlight alongside Charles Xavier and Caliban, and is one of my favorite movies ever. Not even superhero movies, like just as a movie in general. Hugh Jackman is chef's kiss, so good. But in the comics, the story has moments that are even darker than what we saw, believe it or not. Like how about a Hulk gang, for starters? That's right, so in this storyline we find the Hulk as one of the few remaining superheroes on Earth. Now at this point, Banner had decided to breed with somebody like him. Maybe just a little bit too much like him. Like, I don't know, say, his cousin? Yeah, his cousin. So him and Jennifer Walters had an offspring and referred to them all as Hulk Gang, which is a sick nickname for your little ones. Now, if you think that's already twisted and wild, the Hulk Gang actually killed Logan's family. Why? Well, they were bored, of course. What else do you do when you're bored? Do you watch these videos, or do you just murder Wolverine's family? Today you did the right choice. So Wolverine went to exchange a few words with the man, of course, and Hulk ended up swallowing Wolverine whole. What a jerk. Don't worry though, Wolverine used his claws to get out in a rather messy way, killing Papa Banner in the process. Number 5, Statue of Liability. We go now to the Incredible Hulk issue 299. So after the Avengers and everybody decided, hey, the Hulk can finally control himself, let's all be nice, let's give him a statue, reward the man. He earned it. Earth's mightiest hero, we love this guy. Yeah, he's on lunchboxes, so nice. Then in comes the villain Nightmare to ruin the day for the rest of us. So he taps into Banner's subconscious and makes him resort back to the monstrous, uncontrollable ways that he used to be. Again, kind of like when Wanda was messing with his brain in Age of Ultron. So he grabs the statue that was made for him and then just hucks it at Thor. That's hilarious. Like, hey, happy birthday, thanks. Ugh. The Hulk even beats up Banner's girlfriend named Kate Waynesboro, not to be confused with the Wayans brothers. So next time you give your friend with anger problems a statue, just make sure they can't throw it at you. And number 4, train problems. Have you ever been commuting to work and you think, oh, what's taking so damn long? Why isn't this train going anywhere? Well, in a world where these beasts exist in real life, the usual traffic jam would have most civilians' palms sweating. Like if the Avengers were real today, like in our world, I'd be afraid all the time. So many villains, so many problems all the time. Like if I heard a balloon pop in the other room, I'd be like, is it Loki? Are we good? Am I dust? What's going on? Is it happening again, please? So in the Incredible Hulk 122, Hulk has a moment where he kind of ruins an entire locomotive, yeah. He was annoyed by the sound of a passing train and does his version of a rope workout, you know, when those like guys get in the thing and they flick it? He does that, but with a train track. Causes all the cars to fly in the air, like that tablecloth trick, except when your like nephew does it and he doesn't know how to do it yet, so they all just fly off. No passengers were on the train, sure, but I mean, making it rain sidecars, I'm sure that's not the easiest thing to clean up. Number 3, Joe Not Fix-It. The Grey Hulk, aka Joe Fix-It, is one of my favorite versions of the Hulk. He's like this bouncer in Vegas, and he reminds me of a security guard that I actually used to work with in a bar. His name's Tony. He was awesome. He was like this big, old guy. He's amazing. So naturally, I like this Hulk a lot. The next point made me like him even more. He's a savage. A savage! So he sees his ex-girlfriend, Marlo Chandler, being attacked by a werewolf. So what does this giant, unstoppable monster do upon seeing this? He just stares and considers letting her get mauled. I mean, maybe he's jealous, maybe he's a little bit, I don't know. But I mean, Joe Fix-It is this tough, I don't give a shit kind of guy. I mean, come on, this is a pretty dark character arc. A little bit too much, Mr. Joe Fix-It. And number 2, Killed Tigra. Okay, yeah, this one goes pretty dark. We go now to the 1995 comic titled The Last Avengers Story. Now at this point, most of our loved heroes have gotten old and retired. Either that or they've died in battle. Not much is happening in terms of super support. So in the first issue, we find the Hulk in, of course, a fit of rage. Classic. And at one point, he gets his green mitts on Tigra and oh baby, that's a position you don't want to be involved in. Tigra jumps in like, yeah, we're a team, haha, the Hulk, I can just claw his eyes out as easily as anybody else. And then Banner grabs her and says, hey, make a wish, and pulls her apart, like one of those holiday finger popper snapper things where you go, yikes, make a wish. Who says that? This guy's messed. And finally, number 1, Hungry Hulk. To end this list, I thought it was fair to pick the 2002 to 2004 run of the Ultimates, where Hulk is, of course, a cannibal. Mark Miller and Brian Hitch wrote this thing so well that I actually want to see this version on screen more than like any of the latter. So after becoming the Grey Hulk, he ended up eating a bunch of people. He even encounters Iron Man and says the line, little man smells like canned meat. Hulk want to know if he tastes like canned meat too. Like, if he said that to me, I would my super suit. I would be like, no, I'm not dealing with this guy. You guys do it. Like, imagine if he said this in the movies. The entire theater would just sit up like, is he about to eat Tony Stank? So since the Grey Hulk incident, he's been locked up, rightfully so. But after Magneto attacks the Ultimates base, they lose power for a little. So during that time, Hulk decides the 6 nursing staff members near him served as a tasty treat. And down the hatch they went. Yum. Number 10, Wanda's Mind Games. With many comics to pick and choose all these events from, we gotta start somewhere where most of us kinda remember, just to get the gears turning. So we go back now to 2015, Avengers Age of Ultron. Now before Wanda Maximoff was an Avenger, she was getting her evil days under her belt. She was Team Hydra, or rather Team Ultron in this case. This included playing mind tricks with the Avengers. Wanda got to Banner and he hulked out, and this time it was bad. It ended very badly. Now at this point in the MCU, the Hulk had a handle on his angry side. It was controllable in a way. All he needed was for Black Widow to tap her fingers on his big old green palm and then say, oh, the sun's getting low, you're good, we're all good. Welcome back, Banner, let's go home. But she wasn't able to do that this time because of Wanda's mind tricks. She was also under her hex. Meanwhile, Ultron's getting his cold hands on some vibranium and Bruce is going nuts. He ends up going absolutely crazy and it takes Iron Man and his new Veronica armor, the Hulkbuster armor. He has to knock some senses back into him, literally. He punches him so hard that he goes to sleep. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a like, that would be great. And while you're there, you might as well just subscribe. I mean, you're already watching these videos, just a little tap-tap-a-roo and then our face will pop into your YouTube. You don't have to do anything. We'll just show up. So thank you so much for your support. Now let's get right back into this video. Number 9, Soul Survivor. Hulk the End, written by Peter David, released in 2002, is a one-shot that takes place in a world where nobody is left but Bruce Banner. In a world probably resembling our near future following a war that ended in nuclear fallout, the issue starts with Banner vlogging. Yeah, just kind of like this in a way. He's accompanied by a vidbot, this floating camera that always hovers 10 feet away from him. It was assigned to confirm and record the fate of the final humans on Earth. Seeing as Banner is the last one and he's not gonna die, it's just gonna follow him around until the end of time. Banner doesn't mind it, but Hulk hates it. God, that would be so annoying. It's like TMZ, but in the future. It's coming. So Banner just absorbs all this nuclear energy and now he walks about all these wastelands that were once home. He's not totally alone though. No, he comes across these giant mutated cockroaches. And it's a really dark and cold ending for Bruce. The Hulk just wants to be the biggest, baddest creature ever and rule a planet, and Banner just wants to pass away. He's done. He wants nothing to do with this. It goes deep. Also, not to mention that the Hulk often has his body destroyed and devoured by these massive mutant cockroaches. He grows them back afterwards because of the increased gamma, but man, that's gotta suck. Number 8, A Perfect Pair. While Logan broke R-rated records back in 2017, it introduced us to what a darker side to the superhero life may just look like. And in the Old Man Logan storyline, we find the Hulk as one of the few remaining superheroes on Earth. Now at this point, Banner had decided to breed with somebody like him, maybe a bit too much like him. Like say, I don't know, his cousin, Jennifer Walters? Yeah, they had offsprings and they referred to them as Hulk Gang. Now, if you think that's crazy enough, the Hulk Gang was actually responsible for the death of Logan's family. Just cause, well, you know, Hulk Gang gets bored. Hulk Gang wants to fight, that's it. So Wolverine went to exchange a few words with the green guy and the Hulk ended up swallowing Wolverine whole. Yum. Now, it sounds like the Hulk won, but that's not the case in this list. Things are gonna get a little bit different. Wolverine then used his claws to get out in a rather messy way. That's why you don't mess with Logan, Banner, come on. Number 7, kicked out by the Illuminati. When you have this massive green monster that likes to smash buildings and rip people apart, you gotta ask yourself, what do we really do with this guy if things stop working out? Where do we put something like that? Well, you kick him out. Or rather, you kick him off planet. There's an idea. In Incredible Hulk issue 9, we see this. We see Fury send the Green Goliath out into space for a mission. He was originally sent to destroy the God's Eye, which is a rogue satellite, but then when the dust and wires settle, Hulk gets ready to come back to Earth. Only the shuttle goes a different way. When asked what if the Hulk comes back, Fury responds with, well, we'll deal with it. Well, he didn't return yet, I'll get into that later, But where he did end up thanks to Fury was Sakaar, and thus begins the Planet Hulk storyline. Number 6, Horseman of the Apocalypse, War Hulk. Yes, this guy's great, we gotta talk about him. In X-Men Apocalypse, we caught a glimpse of the Horseman. We have Apocalypse surrounding himself with the likes of Storm, Cyclops, Gambit, and Archangel before going to Magneto himself. But what if he recruited the Hulk in this movie? What if we saw that? What would that look like? What if these superhero properties were all under one roof? Well, that's what happens in the Onslaught storyline. We pick up right after the Hulk and Banner split into 2 separate units, and they're on different Earths. So the angry green one ended up being recruited to serve as the Horseman War, thus giving us War Hulk. This version of the Hulk is just a treat. He's even more intimidating and powerful with Apocalypse's upgrade. Even Apocalypse had to put a limit on his powers. That's how you know it's real. Number 5, Nightmare's Mind Games. We go now to the Incredible Hulk issue 299. So after the Avengers and everybody decided, hey, the Hulk can finally control himself, let's be nice and maybe make a statue for the guy. He earned it. Earth's mightiest heroes. We love this guy. This is the best. And then in comes the villain Nightmare, just to ruin the day for everybody involved. He taps into Banner's subconscious and then makes him resort back to the monstrous, uncontrollable ways that he used to be. Again, kind of like when Wanda toyed with him in Age of Ultron, except this time he had a nice handy statue to break over his friends' heads instead, you know? He grabs a statue that was made for him and then he tosses it right at Thor. The Hulk even goes after Banner's girlfriend, Kate Waynesboro, so surely this is the day the Hulk never wished happened, so we had to include it. Number 4, Train of Emotions. Not all of these outbursts are necessarily the Hulk's fault. Sometimes it's the humans or other evil villains that are involved that just use him as a vessel. He's forced to live with a good amount of trauma, so much so that he's easily triggered by humans and their machines, like trains, for example. In the Incredible Hulk issue 122, the Hulk has a moment where he kind of destroys an entire locomotive. Hear me out, Hulk is still the victim in this situation. Now the thing is, no passengers were on the train. Great, lucky, awesome. But before he lashed out, he explained how these machines are always hurting the Hulk, or they carry soldiers to where the Hulk is hiding. So he's used to humans wanting to hurt him or do tests on him. So much so that just the sight of the train upsets our man. Now imagine if there were people on that train, they would think that it's all his fault, when in actuality it's just the government scaring him. I don't know, maybe stop launching missiles at him. He might trust you, just an idea. Number 3, Sent to Space. Again. This time it wasn't Director Fury, no. This time it happened in Amazing Spider-Man issue 328. The Hulk gets launched into space, but not in a fancy ship, and not for a fancy mission, but because Spider-Man was the current Captain Universe host, and the Hulk simply got in his way. Peter Parker obtained these new powers. He can now control web lines through willpower alone, and the dude can straight up fly. This is a great day for Peter, but it's about to become way more interesting. In comes the Hulk, ready to smash for bucks, as he puts it. Well, Peter and his new powers have got some showing off to do. After a brief exchange of words and punches, Peter finishes the battle by punching the Hulk into space. And the Hulk has accepted defeat. He thinks this is the end. He's like, wow, just like the Beatles, here comes the sun. Look at me, defeated by something I can't even punch. How tragic. And then Spider-Man swoops up, grabs him, and pulls him back down to Earth. Close one. Number 2, the other snap. In the series Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect, we meet the alternate dark future version of the Hulk. His name was the Maestro. He made his first appearance in a vision back in Incredible Hulk Volume 2, issue 401. But the Maestro is the main antagonist in this story. Now it takes place about 100 or so years in the future after a nuclear war put the planet close to extinction, similar to Hulk the End, similar vibes. Now the Maestro had been absorbing all this nuclear radiation this whole time, and he ended up becoming the strongest thing on the planet. He had these massive increases in strength and anger, plus he had the brains of Banner, so arguably he's unstoppable. While the two beasts are scrapping it out, the Hulk helps some bystanders out when a building almost crushes them. Now while this is happening and he's distracted, in comes Maestro and snaps the Hulk's neck. I mean, that would suck any day of the week, but a future version of yourself doing it, I mean, that just adds insult to injury. And finally, number 1, punched into retirement. Thor Ragnarok ended with the Asgardians drifting off into space. Surtur had just laid waste to Asgard in order to defeat Hela, and like Odin himself said, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. And these people are about to run into a bigger, badder ship very shortly. Avengers Infinity War opens with the same ship being taken over by Thanos and the Black Order. It starts off with Ebony Maw. He's giving a nice speech to a bunch of people who are dead and can't even hear the speech. And meanwhile, Thanos is rolling back his shoulders. He's already obtained the power gem at this point, and he knows the Space Stone is on this ship. But the Hulk comes out for one last swing. He comes out beast mode and starts smashing Thanos. Now for a moment, we think that the Hulk has got him. For a moment. And then Thanos, without the use of the Power Stone, beats up the Hulk so hard that he doesn't come out in the entire movie. This guy punched him in the neck so hard, he was like, okay, I'm done. I'm retired. I'm definitely not coming out. See you in 5 years, maybe.